Hello friends, welcome to this evening's Kirtan and Stories with Ananda, Sacramento. My name is Nayaswamis Suryadas and this is my wife Nayaswamis Chandi, and it is a joy to be with you this evening sharing in the teachings of our Guru. This evening we will be focusing on the topic, The Pilgrim Meets His Guide. This is from a chapter in Swami Kriyananda's book, The New Path. It is the chapter where he meets Yogananda, and we will be exploring and honoring when Swami Kriyananda first discovered the Autobiography of a Yogi and how that transformed his life, and also his subsequent meeting with his guru, Paramhansa Yogananda. And in this meeting and in this discovery of the Autobiography of a Yogi, our lives have also been transformed because Swami made it his life's goal to share these teachings, to share his Guru's vibration and his Guru's teachings with all of us, which led to Ananda and has led to so many lives being uplifted and transformed over the years. We will do some chants, we'll have some stories and some comments, and we will have some brief periods of meditation and a music video later on this evening, and we'll end, as we always do, with our digital flower ceremony. So if you have a flower available to offer at the end of the program, that would be nice, and if not, of course, you could mentally offer a flower. So let's begin with a prayer. Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Friend, beloved God,
Friend, beloved God,
Great Masters,
Great Masters,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahasaya,
Lahiri Mahasaya,
Swami Sri Teshwar,
Swami Sri Teshwar,
and our beloved Guru,
and our beloved Guru,
Paramhansa Yogananda,
Paramhansa Yogananda,
Saints of all religions,
Saints of all religions,
Friend and Guide Swami Kriyananda,
Friend and Guide Swami Kriyananda,
humbly we bow before you all.
humbly we bow before you all.
Beloved Guru,
Beloved Guru,
be with us this evening.
be with us this evening.
Open our hearts to your living presence.
Open our hearts to your living presence.
Guide our thoughts.
Guide our thoughts.
Lift our consciousness up.
Lift our consciousness up.
Help us to feel what it was like
Help us to feel what it was like
when Swamiji met you,
when Swamiji met you,
when he discovered your greatest book, Autobiography of a Yogi.
when he discovered your greatest book, Autobiography of a Yogi.
We long to know you.
We long to know you.
We long to be one with you.
We long to be one
We
with
are
you.
forever yours.
We are forever yours.
Bring us home to thee.
Bring us home to thee.
Om.
Om.
Peace.
Peace.
Amen.
Amen.
We'll have some chants now, and throughout this evening I invite you to tune into both the presence of Paramhansa Yogananda, our Guru, and also the presence of Swamiji, of Swami Kriyananda, and to try to feel devotion and a sense of offering to them. If we open our hearts to them, they will guide us, they will help us to experience the divine within and to grow spiritually. So let's have some chants now.
We'll start with Hymn to the Brahma. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Marishwara, Guru Shaksha, Param Brahma, Asmai Shri Guruve Namaha, Brahmandam Paramasukaram Kevalam Jnanamurti
Let's meditate for about 3 minutes. Welcome again, everyone. I'd like to share now a little bit of Swamiji's life leading up to his discovery of Autobiography of a Yogi. His given name was J. Donald Walters, and people called him Donald after his middle name. And even as a boy, Donald was very inquisitive. He wanted to understand why we were here. Why am I here? Why do I exist? What is the meaning of life? What is God? If God is real, what can he be? He had all these questions, even as a young man and even as a boy. And he sought the answers to these questions originally in the church he was born into, and he found that unsatisfactory. In fact, at a certain point, as a young adult, he told his mother he would no longer go to church with her because he felt like what it taught was not true. He sought answers in science, in the arts. In fact, he wanted to be a playwright. He had hoped to discover a deeper meaning in life and to share that through plays and through the arts. And at a certain point, he realized he didn't have any answers to share, and he kind of turned away from that. He sought answers in nature. He spent time out in nature. He went for a bike ride, meaning to go for very, very long ways with nothing but a bike and his clothes, and going off into the forest and riding his bike. And that didn't go very well. He wasn't in very good condition to actually do that, and he didn't have supplies and things, and that didn't work out very well. He thought, well, being in nature, maybe I'll experience God or I'll experience some divine presence. And so he decided to become a lumberjack for a while. And of course, the big challenge with being a lumberjack is that many, of course not all, I don't want to say anything bad about lumberjacks, but many lumberjacks have somewhat of a coarse nature. And in fact, this was the case of those that Donald worked with in those days when he experimented with working as a lumberjack. He had come to a point where he realized that God was consciousness. He was going for a long walk, and he thought, if God exists, what is he? And then he thought, it is because I am conscious that I am asking this question. And so God himself must be consciousness. And it's the realization is deeper than the words that I just shared. He had a very profound experience in that walk and really deeply understood that God is consciousness. And he went back to the room where he was staying. He was sharing a home with, I think, two or three other college students. And he was excited about what he had figured out. And they all kind of laughed at him and called him too serious. And he went off by himself in his room, kind of holding it for himself, because it really was a special moment, and he wanted to hold on to that. He had come to the conclusion that to know God, he needed to become a hermit. And he decided he would get a job on a merchant marine ship, and that way he'd be able to save money. You can't really spend money while you're out to sea, you make money, and he would use that money to become a hermit. And so he got a merchant marine license, and he lived in Scarsdale in New York, but he went to New York City to get his license and to see if any ships had come in. And they told him there were no ships in that day, but to maybe come back in a few days and try again. And so while he was in New York City, he decided to go to a bookstore. And he went to the Doubleday Dorian bookstore, and he found there that they had a section of books on Eastern teachings, on Eastern philosophy, and on the philosophy of India in particular. He had had a previous experience at his mother's home. He found a book, I believe it was called The World Bible, or something like that. And it had scriptures from all over the world, from different religions. And he did read a little bit of the Bhagavad Gita in that book, and he was very, very moved by this. And so he went into this store looking for books on Eastern teachings, and he kind of scanned the bookshelves, and he found the Ramayana, the Mahabharata. He found books on the Upanishads and and other books on yoga. And of course, he found the Bhagavad Gita as well there. And so he scanned the bookshelf, and then he stood up and started over again to kind of take a second look at all the books that were there. And suddenly a book popped out that he had missed the first time. And he looked at the face on the cover of this book, and he was deeply moved by this image, this face of this person. He felt deep love, deep wisdom, deep joy, and he was moved, and he picked up the book and he began to thumb through it, and he saw that this man lived in California, and he was surprised at that. And he thought, wow, could this be someone who could teach me, who can show me the way? And then he came across a passage. This book is dedicated to Luther Burbank, an American saint. And he thought, American saint, oh, how can that be? That is not possible in this land of the almighty dollar. And he was kind of disillusioned with the book for a moment, and he put it back down. And he ended up buying a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. It was a copy by Sir Edwin Arnold. Sir Edwin Arnold. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but anyway, it's a very popular, very poetic version of the book. And he took that home, and he began to read it, and he was deeply moved by this. So I'd like to share in his writing, well, actually I'm going to share a couple excerpts from the book that he was reading. By this sign is the sage known, being of equal grace to comrades, friends, chance-comers, strangers, lovers, enemies, aliens, and kinsmen, loving all alike, evil or good. What wonderful words. And then he went on to read, yea, knowing me, the source of all, by me all creatures wrought, the wise in spirit cleave to me, into my being brought, and unto these, thus serving well, thus loving ceaselessly, I give a mind of perfect mood, whereby they draw to me, and all for love of them within their darkened souls I dwell, and with bright rays of wisdom's lamp their ignorance dispel. And Swamiji was very, very moved by these words, and he read the entire book in a couple of days and really found it to be meaningful and to speak to him. And it is Sir Edwin Arnold was the author, the person who translated that copy of the Bhagavad Gita. So Swami decided about 4 days after he had been there in New York City to return to see if a ship had come in. And he was back in New York City, and he was in the area of that store, Doubleday Duran, I should say. And he began to think about the face on the cover of that book he had picked up, and he thought, should I buy that book? Should I go get it? And then he kind of scolded himself, you're too intellectual already, you need to save money if you want to become a hermit. You should just put this aside. Let's go check on the ship, see if any ships have come in. And so he heads towards the docks. And as he's walking, he feels an actual force moving his legs, kind of pushing him back towards the direction of the store. And suddenly he has this realization, wow, I'm being magnetized to go to the store and get this book. And once this happened, he had no more resistance. He turned around and he headed towards the store, and he bought Autobiography of a Yogi, and he brought it home. And I'd like to continue by sharing Swami Kriyananda's own words from his book, The New Path, on the experience of reading the autobiography. I waited until I'd reached my room in Scarsdale before opening the book, and then began the most thrilling literary adventure of my life. Autobiography of a Yogi is the story of a young Bengali Indian's intense search for God. It describes a number of living saints he met on his journey, especially his own great guru, Swami Yukteswar. It also describes more clearly than any other mystical work I have ever read since the author's experiences with God, including the highest one possible, samadhi, mystical union. In chapter after chapter, I found moving testimony to God's living reality, not only in infinity, but in the hearts and lives of human beings. I read how Yogananda's prayers, even for little things, had been answered, and how, by placing himself unreservedly in God's hands, his unanticipated needs had been met unfailingly. I read of intense love for God, such as I myself yearned to possess, of a relationship with him more intimate, more dear than I had dared to imagine possible. Until now, I had supposed that a life of meditation might give me, at best, a little peace of mind. But here I discovered all at once that the fruit of the spiritual life is love and bliss beyond imagination of expectancy. Until recently, I had doubted the value of prayer, except perhaps as a means of uplifting oneself. But now I learned and could not for a moment doubt that God relates individually, lovingly, to each and every seeker. Never before had I encountered a spirit so clearly truthful, so filled with goodness and joy. Every page seemed radiant with light. As I read Autobiography of a Yogi, I alternated between tears and laughter, tears of pure joy, laughter of even greater joy. For 3 days I scarcely ate or slept. When I walked, it was almost a tiptoe, as if in an ecstatic dream. What this book described finally was the highest of sciences, Kriya Yoga, a technique that enables the seeker to advance rapidly on the path of meditation. I, who wanted desperately to learn how to meditate, felt all the excitement of one who has found a treasure map, the treasure in this case being a divine one, buried deep within my own being. Autobiography of a Yogi remains the greatest book I have ever read. One perusal of it was enough to change my whole life. From that time on, my break with the past was complete. I resolved in the smallest detail to follow Paramhansa Yogananda's teaching. Finding that he recommended a vegetarian diet, I immediately renounced meat, fish, and fowl. He could have recommended a diet of bread and water, and I'd have adopted that diet without a qualm. For more than anything else, what this book gave me was the conviction that in Yogananda I had found my guru, my spiritual teacher for all time to come. Only a few days earlier, I hadn't even known this strange word, guru. I hadn't known anything about yoga, or reincarnation, or karma, or almost any of the basic precepts and terminology of Indian philosophy. Now, incredibly, I felt such deep and utter trust in another human being that, ignorant of his philosophy though I was willing to follow him to the end of life. And while I had yet to meet him, I felt as if I had, on seeing his face on the cover of the book, and while I had yet to meet him, I felt, as I had on seeing his face on the cover of the book, that he was the truest friend I had ever known. Let's chant.
Shri Yogananda
meditate for about 5 minutes. I'd like to continue the story. After reading Autobiography of a Yogi, Swami Kriyananda, then known as Donald, took a bus across the country from New York to California to meet Paramhansa Yogananda. He arrived in Los Angeles on the morning of September 11, 1948. He was exhausted from his journey. He hadn't had a chance to shower or shave for several days, but he took the opportunity when he arrived in LA. And then he took another bus about 100 miles to Encinitas, the little coastal town where Yogananda had his hermitage. The hermitage is still there. And Swami, when he read the book, he missed the idea that Yogananda had created an organization. He thought that this little hermitage was all that existed of his work. So he had no clue that there was this greater work, that there were readings that were sent out, weekly to people, monthly to people, that there was correspondence going on all over the United States and even all over parts of the world. And so he showed up at the Encinitas Hermitage. He was dressed all in white because he believed, wrongly, that people in California dressed like people in Florida and Havana. And that was the only hot or, kind of temperate areas that he had been in, and he just assumed that the dress was kind of the same. So he was wearing this white clothing, and he shows up at the door, and he rings the doorbell, and he says that it actually took several minutes before anyone answered. But finally, the door opened, and an elderly woman greeted him and said, "How can I help you?" And Swamiji said that he wanted to meet Paramhansa Yogananda. I actually don't know how he said it, but he says that he said it in a way that was very, very wrong. Anyway, and she looked at him kind of funny. And she actually thought that he was there to repair the water because his white clothing somehow gave her the impression that he was a repairman. And he's like, no, I want to meet Yogananda. And she's like, oh, I see. And she asked him, have you read any of the lessons that we send out? He goes, there are lessons? He had no clue that there were lessons. And of course he had not, and he had no idea. He said, she said, you will have to read a lot of them and study them before you can, join us. Because he had told her right from the beginning, I want to join this work, I want to live here, I want to be a disciple of Yogananda. And she said, you'll have to study a lot of these lessons before you can do that. And he was kind of taken aback, and he's like, how long does that take? And she said, about 4 years. And he was just beside himself. He couldn't believe he had just traveled all the way across the country, and he's being told that it's going to take 4 years before he could, not meet his guru, but become a part of this work. And when he asked to see Yogananda, she told him that he was out of town, that he was in Hollywood, at the Hollywood church, doing a sermon. And Swamiji's reply was, you have a church in Hollywood? And he kind of had the idea, having never been to the West Coast, that Hollywood was nothing but studios, movie studios, and that there weren't homes and businesses and all these things there like there are. And so he didn't make a great impression on this elderly woman, who of course is Sister Gyana Mata, a great, great soul. In fact, Yogananda's foremost woman disciple. So he decides that, I'll go and see Yogananda at the service in Hollywood. I think he was too late to actually make the service, but he hoped to possibly catch him. And so, once again, he is on a bus going back to the LA area to meet his guru in Hollywood. And as he was on that bus traveling, he remembered this woman's eyes, because part of the time he was kind of feeling a little bit of animosity towards her for kind of blocking him from his great task. And but then he remembers her eyes, and he remembers how sweet her eyes were and how they held divine wisdom and divine love. And he realized that he had misjudged her, and he kind of offered a little prayer, kind of up, not necessarily to her, but up to the divine, saying, I should not have judged her so, I should not have judged you so, please forgive me. And in that moment, he had this great feeling that somehow everything was going to work out, that somehow he was accepted. He did have a few more challenges to work through, as Chandi might share shortly, but he felt in that moment as if he was accepted. And so let's chant another chant.
I will be sharing you a reading from the Path, And the reading today is how Yogananda went to meet Master at the Hollywood Church. And this is the passage. What large, lustrous eyes now greeted me. What compassion and sweetness in his smile. Never before had I seen divine beauty in his human face. I guess I should step back a little bit. He was outside sitting for quite a long time, and the receptionist there actually told him that he wouldn't be able to see Yogananda today and that he would have to come back. And so he patiently waited and outside in the hallway, and then shortly as he was pretty much getting ready to leave, he was summoned into the room where Yogananda was. The master seated himself on a chair and motioned me to the sofa beside him. What may I do for you? I want to be your disciple. The reply welled up from my heart irresistibly. Never had I expected to utter such words to another human being. The master smiled gently. Over and over again I prayed desperately in my heart. You must take me. I know you know my thoughts. I cannot say it outwardly. I'd only burst into tears, but you must accept me. You must. Early in the conversation, he told me I agreed to see you only because Divine Mother told me to do so. I want you to know that it isn't because you come here from such a long distance. 2 weeks ago, a lady flew here all the way from Sweden after reading my book, but I wouldn't see her. I do only what God tells me to do. He reiterated, Divine Mother told me to see you. There followed some discussion of my past, and he appeared to be pleased with my replies and with my truthfulness. I knew that already. He once remarked, indicating that he was only testing me to see if I would answer him truthfully. Again, a long silence, while I prayed ardently for acceptance. All right, he said, at last. You have good karma. You may join us. I had spent quite a bit of time trying to find the words of what must have been going through Kriyananda's mind when he was there. We often heard him tell this story many, many times. And you could just feel the love of, I want to be your disciple. And what that really meant. It was almost like a wave of depth, of a crust of in the ocean, just crusting with this excitement, and then bated breath, waiting to hear what his answer might be. And I've often thought, how can I take that into my own life? And how can I practice that I want to be your disciple again and again? We always get entrenched in Maya and our daily lives, and we forget about the Guru. We forget that we are his disciple here. And how can we come back to that humble state that Swami was so in at that time? So I had a thought. I've often loved the discipleship vow, and I thought I'd read a little bit of it to you, because this just brings back that memory of, I want to be your disciple. having long sought the eternal light, long pondered the eternal truths, long followed the winding path that leads to thee, I have walked with my own strength all too seldom with thine. I have walked with the thought, I want this from life, these answers, that guidance, this pathway or that. But I have seen that as often as my claims on life eluded me, as often as I presumed on thy will, it turned away from me. Ah, too long, Mother, have I sought thee for myself, and not for thy love. I know that without thy strength added to mine, infusing it, I shall never find thee. And really, that is how we can tune in to Master. We weren't with him in the body as Swamiji was, but many times his devotees would be taking pictures and roaming around very restless. And he would say, stop doing that. Tune in to my presence within. So Master brought us to tune into his presence and that unconditional love, intuitively, how we can feel his guidance in everything we do. So how do we do that on the spiritual path? How do we keep coming back to that again and again? I wrote down some things that I found that Swami Kriyananda actually guided his monks in the early years of SRF that I thought might be helpful for us. Some of those necessities on the spiritual path. One being devotion, being high on the list. The next one being will. But again, you can't have intellect and without devotion, and they work hand in hand. So we have to use our willpower in order to be able to be in tune with our devotion of giving our love to the Guru to guide us. Discrimination. Attunement to the Guru. This is one of the most important things. Keep calling him at the point between the eyebrows. During the day or at any time that you need him, call him. Chant on the Guru. Notice pictures around your house or in your car or in your workplace. I used to have a friend who she couldn't have the picture of the Guru at her desk, so she would hide it underneath a few books, and then she would open it up when she needed it. Colors, the orange color every time. If you have orange flowers, it can remind you of the Guru. Pray to him. How would you like me to be in this moment? This is Swami used to always do. Totally before anything, he'd pray to Master. Master, what would you like in this situation? We too should be working towards that. Practicing the presence of God. We've spent many hours talking about that in these Friday night events. Renunciation. Loyalty, giving everything and our service to God. Regular meditation, being tuned with the Guru in our meditations. Willingness, are we able to be asked, be guided? I stand ready to obey thy least command. Be willing to do the things we know that the Master is asking us to do. Overcoming moods, our likes, our dislikes, things that don't work out for us in a situation. Give it to Master. Let him guide you. Enjoyment of your work without personal ambition. Just of the joy of love that you give in every moment when we're serving our Guru. and then always being aware of our lower nature, that we can attune our thoughts, our speech, our actions to our higher nature, which is truly who we really are. There's a story about a disciple who was with his guru, and his guru gave him some instruction to go on pilgrimage. And the disciple said, well, he thought it was very odd because he was with his guru. Why would he want to leave his guru's ashram to go on pilgrimage? But he stood up, he walked 3 times around his guru, and then he sat down. And he said, that was my pilgrimage. Ultimately, God is the guru. God is the one who guides us. First, as Suryadas was talking about with Swami's life, Swami kept asking questions. Why is life so difficult? What's the meaning of life? And then the next thing we ask for is, why do we suffer? Why is so many people suffering in the world? So we seek out teachers and books to answer those questions. But then ultimately, when the disciple is truly ready, the guru appears. And that is what happened with Swamiji. The guru appeared on the Autobiography of a Yogi, and he took action right away at that willingness to serve, that willingness to go all the way across the country to meet his guru. And then to know that our job is to listen to the guru, because all he wants is for us to be self-realized. That's his only job for us, is to purify our ego and our attachments so that we may find God, that we might have, through endless incarnations, we've called out for his name. And as we walk through this path, each one of us in a completely different form, but perfect jewels in every way in God's eyes. Joy to you.
That was a really wonderful thought that Chandi gave towards the beginning of what she was saying. This idea that, I'm putting it in my words now, it may not be exactly what she was saying, but the idea that we don't just become disciples once. We become disciples once when we start and we take this vow, but we also renew that vow formally. We do that once a year or whatever, but each moment, each day, we kind of become disciples as we remember to invite the Guru into our lives, as we remember to practice what the Guru has given us to do, as we decide that even though I kind of have some resistance to doing this one thing, maybe it's energization, maybe it's whatever, I'm going to do it because the Guru has asked me to do it, and I know that the Guru has given me these things to do because they will help me, they will uplift me, they will guide me. So this idea that we become disciples over and over and over again in every moment, I think is an important one. And Yogananda said that the moments are more important than the years. The moments are more important than years. We can be disciples for many, many years, but it's how we handle each moment in the day, how we keep returning to that center, keep returning to our ideals and to our search for God, our desire to know God, our desire to be channels for God's light. We probably, none of us here were alive, met Yogananda in the body, but we all have our own similar stories, and we all found either the autobiography first, or maybe we found Ananda or SRF or Yogananda in some other way, and then found the autobiography. But we all have these wonderful stories. And the beautiful thing about Swamiji's story is that it's like he did it not just for himself, but for all of us, because he just went to all ends to share Master with the world. When he was at SRF, it was very important to him to share Master's work, and of course, Yogananda asked him to. Yogananda told him, you have a great work to do. He wanted him to write, he wanted him to lecture, and he assigned him to lecture when he was so young and so green on the path that it seemed almost bizarre. But it was what he was meant to do, and it's as if Swami became a disciple to bring discipleship to all of us. And so we're all blessed by these stories because they affect all of our lives, because Ananda wouldn't be here if Swami Kriyananda hadn't found the autobiography and then acted in the way he did, taking immediate action, traveling across the country, meeting his guru, and then dedicating his life in absolute terms to serving his guru. I would like to share with you a couple of videos. One of them, Chandi was mentioning, Swami's own words. We've heard him tell how he met his guru and he said, I want to be a disciple. I'm going to actually share a very short clip where he does describe some of what we just talked about. And before that, I'm going to play a video of the song O Master with some images of Swamiji and Master.
May thy joy fill our days, O Master. May thy wisdom guide our ways. The time has come for us to see that there's but one reality upon the earth and high above. The truth that all was made from love. A love that calls to us to fly above the hills, above the sky, above the storms, above the pain. A land where peace and laughter reign. May thy joy fill our days, O Master. May thy wisdom guide our ways. Guide all our hopes and all our dreams, past every glow that merely seems, into the light, the inner sun, into the truth that we're all one. Help us to find in every hour, in every thought, in every flower, a joy that spans eternity, the truth that makes us ever free. May thy joy fill our days, O Master. May thy wisdom guide our ways. The time has come for us to see that there's but one reality upon the earth and high above. The truth that all was made from love. love that calls to us to fly above the hills, above the sky, above the storms, above the pain, a land where peace and laughter reign. Oh, Master, may thy joy fill our days. Oh, Master, may thy wisdom guide our ways. Guide all our hopes and all our dreams. Cast every glow that merely seems into the light, the inner sun, into the truth that we're all one. Help us to find in every hour, in every thought, in every flower, a joy that spans eternity, the truth that makes us ever free. Oh, Master, may thy joy fill our days. Oh, Master, may thy wisdom guide our ways. Oh, Master, may thy joy fill our days. Oh, Master, may thy wisdom guide our ways.
I'm going to play this short clip of Swamiji talking about finding Master, and we'll take that directly into a period of meditation for 5 or 6 minutes.
The turning point in my life happened when I took a long walk and I said, if there's a God, what must he be? And then I thought, well, I'm asking this question. That means I'm conscious. Therefore, he must be consciousness. This was, to me, a very moving moment. And I swore that very night, I'm going to give my life to God. Several months later, I went into a bookstore and I saw Autobiography of a Yogi. I read that book by Paramhansa Yogananda. It completely changed my life. I took the next bus from New York to Los Angeles, and the first words I spoke to him were words I never imagined addressing. I said, I want to be your disciple.
Let's meditate. now to offer a flower before the Guru, a kind of online flower ceremony. We'll share some images of the altar and some images of Master and Swamiji, and we'll play a chant, and you can offer your flower, and if you don't have a flower, you can mentally visualize a flower offering. So let's begin.
Listen to my soul song, listen to my heart song, listen to my soul song, listen to my heart song. In secret in my soul, I will gather blossoms for thee, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet. Listen to my soul song, listen to my heart song, listen to my soul song, listen to my heart song. In secret in my soul, I will gather blossoms for thee, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet. Listen to my soul song, listen to my heart song, listen to my soul song, listen to my heart song. In secret in my soul, I will gather blossoms for thee, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet, dipping them in devotion.
Give us a moment while we offer our flower. So let's end our evening by offering healing prayers for the world and for people that we think of. Let's start by bringing to mind anyone you'd like to pray for, holding them in the light of the spiritual eye, seeing them blessed by our gurus, blessed with, filled with Divine Mother's healing presence. Now let's also visualize this world encircled by divine light, by the light of higher consciousness, of deeper understanding, of the joy of the soul, of divine love. And see that light uplifting souls everywhere around the world, in all countries, in all cities. Let's especially see that light in areas of strife, in Ukraine, in Russia, in the surrounding area, and in all areas in the world where people are troubled. Let's rub our hands together briskly. Send the light of our spiritual path out into the world to bless all souls. Om. Om. Let's end with a prayer. Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Friend, Beloved God,
Friend, Beloved God,
Great Masters of Self-Realization,
Great Masters of Self-Realization,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahasaya,
Lahiri Mahasaya,
Swami Sri Teshwar,
Swami Sri Teshwar,
and our beloved Guru,
and our beloved Guru,
Paramhansa Yogananda,
Paramhansa Yogananda,
with the deepest
the
devotion
deepest devotion
and with gratitude,
and with gratitude.
we lay our lives at Thy feet.
We lay our lives at Thy feet.
Receive us,
Receive us,
lift us up.
lift us up.
We want to know You as You truly are.
We want to know You as we truly are.
We want to know ourselves.
We want to know ourselves.
Help us to be channels of light,
Help us to be channels of light,
bringing Thy presence into the world
bringing Thy presence into the world,
through all of our activities,
through all of our activities,
through our every thought,
through our every thought,
through our devotion,
through our devotion,
and through our practice of meditation.
and through our practice of meditation.
May we swiftly come home to Thee.
May we swiftly come home to Thee.
Om.
Om.
Peace.
Peace.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for joining us this evening. Have a blessed evening.